Hello, welcome back to another AP3 video. Today's video will be going over AP Environmental Science, topic 5.10, Impacts of Urbanization. So the first thing we're going to talk about is urbanization. Now, urbanization is basically a shift away from a lifestyle that's rural, based on agricultural jobs, to non-agricultural jobs that bring you to a human settlement that has a high population density. And it has to do with the human population density and also the fact that the jobs that people have in urban areas aren't agriculturally related. We'll be talking about the roles of vegetation in urban areas later in the video. But for now, countries that went through the shift from rural areas to urban areas has gone through the demographic transition. The pros is that it keeps the human activity up, and we also have mass transit. Basically, it's always going to be running, and everything's just be closer together. Now we're going to lower the use of fossil fuels per person, basically lowering the use of emissions. It's an efficient use of space. Cities grow up and down, basically minimizing land impact on humans. So now we're going to talk about urbanization impacts on the water cycle. Now, with high density human settlement, there's an increased need for water. So we have water diversion projects. One version is a dam, and whenever you alter the water flow from the way it is naturally, you're impacting the organisms in that aquatic environment. So the dam impacts upstream and downstream. Now, when it's upstream, it's going to be behind the dam, and when it's downstream, it's going to be where the dams flow. Now, upstream has flooding issues, and any settlement and organic matter ending up behind the dam will lead to decomposition problems. Now, downstream, you aren't getting the normal amounts of settlement and water that the organisms are used to in order to survive and thrive. And then with canals, you're taking out water, decreasing amount of water that's available through the natural cycle of the river and impacting the organisms. Now, another problem in urban areas and the coast is if they get their fresh water from an aquifer that butts up to the ocean, we have something called water intrusion. Now, there's a separation of fresh and salt water based on both differences in density and pressure keeping salt water out. Now, as you withdraw more salt water than it is recharging, the salt water can intrude into the aquifer till it is finally what is being withdrawn from the aquifer. And it takes a lot of funds to desalinate water, basically taking out the salt from the water. And the best thing to do is just avoiding it at all costs. And this is only particular to coastal areas that have a freshwater aquifer next to a salt body of water. And now this was a lot of information. Now we're going to talk about impermeable surfaces. Basically, it just means that water can penetrate through them, which leads to two problems. Now, due to water not getting through, you can recharge those groundwater sources that even the city depend on, but for sure the natural environment around the urban area do. Now, when the water lands from rain, it needs to go somewhere, and that's runoff, following the natural slope of the lands, and can end up either into low surface soil areas or into bodies of water, and the water can pick up soil, solid waste, and taking it along the way. Now, if they end up, before I get to there, we got to talk about the loss of vegetation first, which basically impacts the water cycle. So basically, there's going to be no water sink and no transpiration, and you don't have that stuff moderating your climate. And then non-point sources of pollution are untreated and run into waterways, impacting the health of the organisms living there. Now, if they end up in groundwater that's withdrawn from drinking, there might be some impurities impacting the human health. So if it ends up in groundwater that's withdrawn from drinking, there's going to be some impurities impacting the human health. And this is everything when it comes to impermeable surfaces. And now we're going to talk about its impacts on the carbon cycle. So carbon is produced from burning of fossil fuels. So industry cars or just anything that uses fossil fuels in the city will release carbon dioxide, leading to climate change. Any impurities in the fossil fuels will also end up in the atmosphere. Now, a high population, there's going to be a lot of waste, meaning a decomposition will either produce carbon dioxide or methane, leading to, again, climate change. And now we're going to talk about air pollution. If air pollution is produced in an urban area, it will impact the surrounding areas that weren't part of the formation of the pollution in the first place. Now, there is a correlation between urban areas and air pollution, and then think about the negative effects in terms of respiratory systems, increased asthma attacks, and irritation, leading to opportunities for respiratory illness settling in. So we're going to talk about now is urban sprawl and heat islands. So urban sprawl, the definition of it is that the more people go to cities, the less places for people to live. So they end up setting in and this gradually larger and larger ring around the urban area called the suburbs. Now, when not planned, you'll have a less vegetation and more roads without the mass transit. So there's going to be more car use, leading to more fossil fuel use per person and more impermanent or impermeable surfaces, leading to runoff. Now, impermeable surfaces leads to something or causes something called heat islands effect. And basically, in impermeable surfaces, there's a low albedo, leading to more absorption of the sun's radiation. In places with lots of roads, pavements, also, and buildings, temperatures are higher and through day and night than they are in surrounding areas. Now, the more vegetation and the more you get away from those impermeable surfaces, the cooler it gets. And waste heat produced from burning of fossil fuels stays locked in the city because it doesn't have a lot of opportunities for dispersing, basically leaving the area. So when heat's produced from fossil fuels, it's going to stay in the area because, again, there's no way or opportunity for it to leave that specific area that the burning of fossil fuel takes place. Okay, now we're going to talk about remediation, basically fixing those issues. So what we can do is just simply put more vegetation, which helps with almost everything. So we add more vegetation, it helps with three things. It helps with runoff because you're taking some of that impermeable surfaces out and putting vegetation in. So there's places for the water to flow and recharge areas of groundwater. So it also increase albedo, basically decreasing the heat island effect. And in terms of air pollution, you have something taking in carbon dioxide. Now, to offset the negative effects, you can, one, plan to take some of your mass transits and extend it out into the suburban areas to decrease the use of fossil fuels, or use of permeable pavement to allow water to flow through it and to the soil below it to recharge and reduce runoff and issues associating with it. And now we're going to talk about is that as cities need repair and expansion continues to with our growing population, you can start doing urban planning. Basically, grow up instead of out. So we're going to be planning, or you're going to plan for multi-state buildings. So everything's going to be walking distance because we're going to plan for multi-use of buildings. We're going to plan for the future, making changes as you renovate areas that are no longer are functioning as well as they could. So basically, we're just planning to use more multi-state buildings, so everything's in walking place, and we can do changes for the renovated areas that are no longer functionally used as they were or they could be. And now we're going to talk about something called remediated brownfields. Basically, anything abandoned building, it can just sit there and it's just an impermeable surface nobody's using. So you can clean up any hazardous waste that builds up there. You can tear out all the concrete, or you can repurpose it by putting some more vegetation and making it a place that a community can be proud of. So when it comes to brownfields, it's just an abandoned building that just sits there, and it's just impermeable surfaces that nobody's using. So you can do three things that can help when it comes to the impermeable surfaces, so it doesn't affect anything at all relating to that. This is another AP3 video. Thank you for watching.